Your Honor, this round is being live streamed. The round is yours. Good luck, everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Judge Velia J. Mesa. I will be presiding over this trial. I'm going to call for the record cause number 1-ON1-2022. That's the United States government, United States of America versus Augie Shepard. I'm going to ask the attorneys to make their announcements for the record. I'm going to start with the attorneys for the government. I'll need your names, please.
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honor. Jamie Cook and Alex Clark for the people.
And for the defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Alex Sneezek on behalf of the defendant, Augie Shepard.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Tijan Sadi on behalf of the defendant, Augie Shepard.
All right, we're going to get started. For the people, do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Your Honor, one moment. Currently, screen sharing is not enabled. In case we want to share any exhibits, can we please enable that before we begin?
Yes.
Yes.
Let the controller know.
It is enabled.
Can you double check, attorneys? You may proceed.
May I proceed?
Yes, Ms. Cook, go ahead.
Call me when you get this. Augie Shepard just walked by my office window and we made eye contact. Those are some of the last words Barry Capello would ever speak, and they never even made it past voicemail. Because that night, after making eye contact with Augie Shepard, Barry Capello was murdered. He was strangled with a pair of jumper cables, and those same jumper cables used to strangle Barry Capello were missing from Augie Shepard's rental car. For 3 years, Augie Shepard waited for an opportunity to get revenge on Barry Capello. And on June 26, 2021, Augie Shepard got that opportunity and he took it. Now, let's take a step back and talk about how we got here. In his previous life, Barry Capello was a member of an organized crime family called the DeBruno crime family. And in 2018, Barry Capello committed one of the greatest sins a member of the DeBruno crime family can commit. He testified against fellow members and named names. One of those names was the defendant, Augie Shepard, the family boss. You see, in organized crime families like the DeBruno crime family, testifying against fellow members is a sin punishable by death. And if given the opportunity, crime families will always attempt to impose that punishment. So immediately after testifying, Barry Capello was moved into the witness protection program for his safety. He dropped his life as a Capello and was given a new identity, Tom Klein, a travel agent from Brooklyn who lived in DeLand, Florida. Barry Capello was supposed to be impossible to find, impossible to kill. But that wasn't the case because on June 25th, 2021, Augie Shepard found Barry Capello. That day, Barry Capello was working in his office, minding his own business like he normally did, when all of a sudden, Augie Shepard walks past his office window. That day, Barry Capello made eye contact with the same person he had been hiding from for 3 years. The defendant, Augie Shepard. Later that night, within 12 hours of making eye contact with Augie Shepard, Barry Capello was murdered. He was lured out to his driveway, attacked from behind, and strangled with a pair of jumper cables. And those same jumper cables used to strangle Mr. Capello were missing from Augie Shepard's rental car, a 2021 Ferrari Pista. There were also shoe prints left at the crime scene, showing movement from the driveway to the side of the house and back to the driveway. Those shoe prints measured as being men's size 11. And based on the depth of impression, The man wearing those shoes weighed about 170 to 190 pounds. Folks, Augie Shepard wore a size 11 shoe. And at the time of his arrest, he weighed 182 pounds. But that's not the only thing that matches Mr. Shepard's description. You'll also hear today from one of the Capello's neighbors, Bellamy Dembski, who witnessed the attack. And I want you to listen closely to Bellamy Dembski's description of the attacker. His height, his weight, hair color, skin color, demeanor, the attacker's car. And remember that description when the defense puts their witnesses on the stand. Now, it's important to note here that the defense does not have a burden in this case today. But based on our discussions, we expect that they will call an investigator named Raylan Gibbons to testify. And Raylan Gibbons is going to try and tell you that Mr. Capello was supposed to be impossible to find. So there's no way Augie Shepard could have found him. No way he could have killed him. But Raylan Gibbons never went to DeLand. She never made eye contact with Mr. Capello like Mr. Shepard did. The only investigation Raylan Gibbons did was what she could do from her desk, staring at a screen, scouring the internet. What's more is that Raylan Gibbons will concede that there's some evidence against Mr. Shepard that she cannot explain. She'll tell you today that she cannot explain the missing jumper cables from Mr. Shepard's rental car, or that eyewitness description that sounds a lot like Mr. Shepard, or the coincidental timing of Mr. Capello being murdered right after making eye contact with Mr. Shepard. But as you'll hear today, that wasn't just a coincidence. It was an opportunity. We also expect for the defense to call Lauren Shepard to testify today, Augie Shepard's daughter. And Lauren Shepard will confirm that Augie Shepard was in DeLand at the time of the murder. But she'll also tell you that she was not with her dad at the time of the murder. She went off to a party. For nearly 4 hours, Augie Shepard was left alone, unattended, unaccounted for. What's more is that Lauren Shepard will tell you that before he testified in 2018, Barry Capello was Uncle Barry to the whole Shepard family. But after, he went from uncle to rat. He went from uncle to being dead to the family. At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Alex Clark, will come up here and he'll walk through the evidence with you. And not only will he show you that Mr. Shepard killed Mr. Capello, he'll show you that Mr. Shepard killed Mr. Capello simply because he saw an opportunity to get revenge and he took it. As the prosecution, we bear the burden to prove to you today beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Shepard killed Mr. Capello and that he did so with the intent to retaliate against him for testifying against him in 2018. Mr. Clark will show you that we met that burden. He'll ask you to hold Mr. Shepard responsible for the consequences of murdering Barry Capello. He'll ask you to hold Mr. Shepard responsible for the consequences of getting such gruesome revenge. For 3 years, Barry Capello was hiding from Augie Shepard. For 3 years, Barry Capello was safe. That ended the moment he knew Augie Shepard found him, the moment they made eye contact. Thank you.
Defense, do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
We don't know what happened. We don't. There's just not enough evidence, not enough explanations, and too many question marks. How would Augie Shepard know where Capello lived? Why was Capello's trunk open? Who killed Capello? We don't know what happened. What we do know is that this case is a tragedy. What happened to Mr. Capello was absolutely devastating, and we, the defense, urge for justice to be served. But justice can only be served if the prosecution brings the right person to trial. Members of the jury, that person is not Augie Shepard. Let's take a look at who Augie Shepard is. Mr. Shepard is an owner of a waste management company, a husband to his wife who is a business owner herself, and a father to his 2 children, a son, Augie Jr., and his firstborn, Lauren, who is gearing up to go off to college. On June 21st, 2021, Augie Shepard flew into Florida to go on a 5-day college road trip with his daughter, Lauren, planned completely by Lauren. They flew into Miami, rented a car, and made their way up to their last stop on the college tour, Stetson University in DeLand, Florida. This is why they were in DeLand. This letter proves the only reason they were in DeLand was so Lauren could tour Stetson University. This is the reason they were there. Lauren and her dad were at Stetson University from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. By 5:30 p.m., they were back in their Airbnb resting before dinner. Now, Lauren sat on her laptop, headphones on, completely zoned in, as teenagers are notorious for, while Mr. Shepard called his wife to check in and hung out in the living room. Because even if his daughter was just on her laptop, he was just happy to be around her. At 7:30 p.m., they were on their way to their dinner reservations, and by 10:30 p.m., they arrived back at their Airbnb, where Mr. Shepard went straight to bed after an exhausting day. Lauren was excited to be in a new city, possibly the city of her future home, and so she wanted to experience a college party. As such, unknown to Mr. Shepard, his daughter snuck out to go to a party. Now, Lauren checked when she left around midnight, and she checked when she came back around 3 a.m. Her father was sleeping the whole time. That night, on the other side of town, sometime between midnight and 1 a.m., Mr. Capello woke up, was lured outside, and saw his car trunk open. Unfortunately, that's when someone came up from behind him and strangled him with jumper cables. Those are the facts. That's what we know. We don't know how his trunk was opened. We don't know why it was opened. Most important, we don't know who killed Capello. Today, you'll hear from Agent Connor Wright, the lead investigator in today's case. You'll learn that the investigation left stones unturned. This investigation overlooked numerous alternate suspects, including Capello's wife, new enemies, past enemies, even unidentified burglars. You'll learn that Capello's neighborhood had 3 burglaries earlier that year, with none of those burglars ever caught. These are people who successfully broke in and escaped. These people may very well have been able to open a car trunk, but when someone came out, they grabbed the jumper cables they saw, and the next thing they knew, they had been in a burglary gone wrong. You'll also learn that it's more than possible that Mr. Capello got back into crime and that he made some new enemies along the way. And maybe he made those enemies mad. Today, you'll also hear from Bellamy Dembski. The prosecution's identification of the attacker rests completely on Mr. Dembski's description. 5'11", 180 pounds, dark hair. That description. That's the description they're relying on. That's the description Mr. Dembski will share with you today based on what he claims to have seen from inside his home across the street and in the dark at 12:30 a.m. Mr. Dembski's testimony will only solidify that we really don't know who killed Capello. The evidence you'll hear today will only leave you with question marks. One of those question marks will be how Mr. Shepard could have known where Capello lived. We will bring investigator Raylan Gibbons to the stand, an expert in finding missing persons. Investigator Gibbons served as a deputy marshal for 30 years and successfully coordinated the relocation and new identification for more than 100 people in witness protection. She will tell you just how hidden Mr. Capello was and just how hard it would have been for someone in his past to track him down. Finally, we'll call Mr. Shepard's daughter to the stand, Lauren Shepard. Lauren will take you through their day step by step and truly show that the prosecution's timeline of events just doesn't fit. Lauren Shepard will account for her father's whereabouts and share that the only extended period of time that she left him was from around 11:30 p.m. to 3 a.m. And that whole time, Mr. Shepard was sleeping. He was sleeping when she left. He was sleeping when she came back. He was sleeping during the killing. Members of the jury, what happened to Mr. Capello was a tragedy, and he absolutely deserves justice. But that can only happen if the right person is brought to trial. That person is not Augie Shepard. The reality is we don't know who killed Capello. Fact of the matter is, it's not our job to prove who did. That's on the prosecution. Throughout this trial, it'll be clear that we just don't know what happened. We don't. At the close of today's trial, we'll ask that you find Mr. Augie Shepard not guilty. Thank you.
Okay, who is going to ask the questions for the state, for the people? Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Mr. Dembski to the stand. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dembski. Please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record.
My name is Bellamy Dembski, Demsky.
Where do you currently live, Mr. Dembski?
I live at 2507 Euclid Street, and that's in DeLand, Florida.
Mr. Dembski, I'd like to turn and discuss the events of June 25th and 26th, 2021. What happened on this day?
I witnessed the attack and
Objection, compound.
Overruled.
Mr. Dembski, would you like me to re-ask that question?
Sure.
I'd like to turn and talk about the days of June 25th and 26th, 2021. What happened on this day?
I witnessed the attack and murder of my neighbor, Tom Klein.
Was Tom Klein your neighbor's real name?
No, it wasn't.
What was their real name?
Well, I didn't know this at the time, but I later found out his name was Barry Capello.
When did you first meet Mr. Capello?
Oh, gosh, 3 years ago when they moved in?
If I showed you a picture of Mr. Capello, would you recognize him?
I would.
Your Honor, I'd like to direct opposing counsel and Mr. Dembski to Exhibit 18 in the case packet. Permission to share my screen, not to publish yet, but just share my screen for the purposes of the trial.
Granted.
Mr. Dembski, what is Exhibit 18?
Exhibit 18 is a photo of 4 men.
Do you recognize any of the men?
Yeah, that's Barry Capello right there. He's the one wearing the Eagles shirt.
And is this a true and accurate photograph of Mr. Capello?
Yeah, looks like him.
Your Honor, permission to introduce Exhibit 18 into evidence?
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, there is a lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Your Honor, permission to publish this for the jury?
Yes, granted.
Mr. Dembski, now that we're all seeing this photograph, what are we looking at?
So like I said, we're looking at a photo of 4 men, and Barry Capello is the one wearing the Eagles shirt.
Do you recognize anyone else in this photograph?
Yes, I do.
And who is that?
Well, the guy standing next to Barry in the gray shirt, that's the one that killed Barry Capello.
Objection, speculation,
Sustained.
move to strike.
Granted.
Mr. Dembski, let's turn and discuss what happened on the night of June 25th. What were you doing that evening?
Well, I was sleeping at one point, or trying to.
What happened?
Well, I heard a noise outside, and it was Brando, the Capello's dog. He was barking, so I got out and looked out the window.
What did you see once you looked out the window?
Well, I saw an expensive-looking sports car. It was dark in color, and it was parked on the street.
How would you describe that car?
Well, like I said, it was a really dark, expensive-looking sports car. Not one that I'd ever seen before. It definitely didn't belong to anyone on that street.
So after you saw that car, what did you do next?
Well, I kept looking out the window, and I saw Barry actually came out of his house. Looked like the trunk to his Impala was popped open.
So once you saw Mr. Capello walk out of his house, what happened next?
Well, he went to close the trunk of his car, and that's when someone came up behind him and wrapped something around his neck.
You said someone came up behind Mr. Capello. Can you describe that person?
Yeah, he was male, about 5'11", 180 pounds. He was white, and he had like black hair.
So after you saw this man come up behind Mr. Capello and wrap something around his neck, what happened next?
He started, Barry that is, started flailing because he was being, like choked out. And eventually, Barry fell to the ground and he stopped moving. The attacker dropped whatever he'd been holding and walked to the sports car and drove away.
And once the attacker drove away in that sports car, what did you do?
Oh, I was so shocked, but I ran out to go make sure that that Barry was okay. And
Was Mr. Capello okay?
no, he was not.
What was Mr. Capello's condition at this point in time?
He was dead.
Objection, speculation,
Overruled.
Now, Mr. Capello, or excuse me, Mr. Dembski, after seeing Mr. Capello like this, what did you do?
Well, I went to call 911, but someone had already called the authorities and the police arrived.
Now, when you approached Mr. Capello's body, did you see anything?
Yeah, there was a pair of jumper cables on the ground next to his body.
If I showed you a photo of those jumper cables, would you recognize them today?
Oh, yeah.
Your Honor, permission to direct opposing counsel and Mr. Dembski to exhibit 26 in the case packet,
Yes, go ahead.
and permission to share my screen for the purposes of being on the same page.
Yes.
Mr. Dembski, what is exhibit 26?
Oh, those are the jumper cables that I was just telling you about.
And is this photograph a true and accurate representation of those jumper cables when you saw them?
Yeah, you can tell that's the Capello's driveway in the background.
Your Honor, permission to introduce Exhibit 26 into evidence.
Any objections to Exhibit 26?
No objections to Exhibit 26, Your Honor.
Your Honor, permission to publish for the jury.
Yes, Exhibit 26 is admitted.
Mr. Dembski, now that we're all looking at Exhibit 26, what is it?
It's a pair of jumper cables.
And where did you find those jumper cables?
They were laying on the ground right next to Barry's body.
And did you see those jumper cables used for?
They were what was used to choke out Barry.
Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Dembski.
Good afternoon.
I want to start off by talking about your involvement in today's case. You lived across the street from Tom and Drea Klein from 2018 to 2021.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You knew the Kleins pretty well, right?
Yeah, I like to think I know all my neighbors.
The Kleins had gone out of town on multiple occasions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everyone takes a vacation once in a while.
But specifically, the Kleins have gone out of town on multiple occasions.
Sure.
When they first moved in, you noticed the two of them fought a lot.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
During one of those times, you were mowing your lawn.
Yeah. I mean, I do mow my lawn often.
You heard them yelling from across the street over your lawnmower.
Yeah, but it's like a new aged lawnmower. Pretty quiet.
Okay, Mr. Dembski, well, directing you back to my question, you did hear them yelling from across the street over your lawnmower.
Yeah.
In fact, you've even seen Drea slap Tom during their arguments.
Objection, Your Honor, improper character evidence under FRE 404.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor, pursuant to 404B, this is evidence of potential third-party culpability. It's not offered to show propensity or a character trait of Drea Klein, but just that on this occasion, she may have had motive.
I'm actually going to sustain the objection. Ask your next question.
So you would agree that besides those arguments, your street is fairly safe?
Yeah. I mean, relatively safe. There were those unsolved burglaries.
Exactly. That's with the exception of the burglaries that occurred in 2021.
I don't remember when.
Is it your testimony today that you weren't sure when the burglaries were?
No, I guess it was 2021.
So there had been 3 burglaries in the 6 months prior to seeing Mr. Capello attacked.
Yeah, I don't recall anyone being hurt though in those burglaries.
That wasn't my question. My question was there had been 3 burglaries in the 6 months prior to seeing Mr. Capello attacked.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And you knew that no one was home during these burglaries?
Yes, I believe so.
So you knew that none of these burglars were ever confronted in the act?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
May I be heard to that, Your Honor?
No, ask your next question.
You have no idea if those burglars were ever caught.
Yeah, honestly, I don't do a good job of reading the local paper.
But Mr. Dembski, to your knowledge, those burglars were never caught.
To my knowledge. Yeah, that's fair.
Let's fast forward and go over what you saw on June 26th, 2021. You woke up that morning around 12:30 a.m. because you heard Tom Klein's dog, Brando, barking.
Yeah.
You heard Brando barking, so you got out of bed to look through your front window.
Yeah.
And that's when you saw a car parked on the street that you didn't recognize.
Yeah, that's correct.
You're not sure what car it was?
It was a fancy sports car. I could tell that.
but you're not sure of the model.
Now, I'm not a huge car guy.
You can't say for sure what color the car was,
It was pretty dark in color. I know that.
but you can't say for sure what color the car was.
No.
You couldn't tell the color because there was so little light.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is that a yes?
Yeah,
It looked like a dark color though.
that's correct.
It could have been dark blue.
I suppose so.
It could have been dark gray.
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
It could have been dark gray,
Yeah, I guess.
but you thought it looked black.
Yeah, I said that it was dark in color and that it might be black.
Well, you said that it looked black, isn't that right?
Yeah, I think I did say that at one point, but it was a little dark in that section.
But Mr. Dembski, you did say that it looked black.
Yeah, I said that.
Let's get into when you saw Tom Klein after waking up around 12:30 a.m. When Tom Klein came out, his car trunk was already open.
Yes, I believe so.
Mr. Klein then went over to close his trunk.
Yeah, he didn't want to leave it open.
That's when you saw someone come up behind him, right?
Yes, that's correct.
From inside your home, you could see the struggle.
Yeah,
You saw Mr. Klein flailing.
yeah, his porch light was on, so I actually had a better view of that than of the car.
Well, all the while, you also heard that dog barking.
Yeah, Brando's got a pretty distinct bark.
And during all that commotion, you never saw Drea Klein.
No, I did not.
Your Honor, permission to display Exhibit 24 constructively to the witness for foundational purposes?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Dembski, this is a photo of the Klein's house in broad daylight, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And this is the home that you live across the street from?
Yeah,
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of their home?
yeah.
At this time, we offer Exhibit 24 into evidence.
Any objections on defense 24?
Yes, Your Honor. At this point in time, there's a lack of foundation for what the markings on the document mean, including the D, A, B, and C.
Okay, defense, do you want to develop those questions?
Yes, Your Honor. May I make an offer of proof?
Yes.
We will be going into each of those labels.
Objection is overruled.
Permission to publish to the jury?
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Dembski, A shows where the attack occurred,
Yes.
and C shows where Tom Klein's car was parked.
Yeah.
Now, Tom's car was parked backed into the driveway, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
And Tom never actually closed the trunk when he came outside.
Well, I think he was going to close the trunk, but then he was attacked.
Well, Mr. Dembski, that wasn't my question. Tom never actually closed the trunk when he came outside.
No, Barry or Tom, however you want to call him, no, he did not get the chance.
So Tom was strangled behind his parked car with the trunk open.
Yeah, it's a Chevy Impala, so it's not a huge car.
That wasn't my question. My question was, Tom was then strangled behind his parked car with the
Yeah.
trunk open.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Dembski, I want to clarify your identification of the attacker. You weren't outside your home when you saw the attacker.
No, I was inside. Yeah. I was
You were
in
watching.
my-
You were watching from across the street,
Yeah,
from inside your home,
that's correct.
through a window
Yeah.
while it was dark outside.
Yes.
and cloudy.
Yeah.
You guessed the attacker weighed 180 pounds.
Yeah.
You guessed the attacker was 5'11".
Yeah. I mean, I know roughly what my neighbor is. And so they were about the same size, like height wise.
But you know that Tom Klein is shorter than the attacker.
Yeah. But not by much.
You believe that the attacker had dark hair.
Yes.
You also then gave the attackers a guess of, you also gave the officers a guess of the attacker's race, right?
I guess it's yes.
You aren't certain of his race, though.
No, I assumed he was white. It looked like he was white, but no, I wasn't 100% certain.
You assumed?
Well, he was white. I could tell that he was white from the back of his neck.
Is it your testimony today that he was white?
I think I said that it was white, but it was dark out.
Mr. Dembski, is it your testimony today that you're sure that this man was white?
I didn't say, I don't think I said sure.
Mr. Dembski, my question was clear. Are you certain of the race of the attacker? Yes or no?
No, I said I wasn't certain.
You don't know what the attacker's eyes look like.
No.
You don't know what their nose looks like.
No.
That's because you only ever saw the back of the attacker's neck.
Well, and their height and approximate weight.
Mr. Dembski, you only ever saw the back of the attacker's neck.
I guess, based on the way you're phrasing the question, yes.
You never saw the attacker's face.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Dembski. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Your Honor,
Call your next witness. Oh, go ahead.
permission for a redirect.
Yes.
Mr. Dembski, how would you describe the man who you saw attack Mr. Capello?
He was about,
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
Mr. Dembski, how would you describe the person you saw attack Mr. Capello?
he was about 5'11", 180 pounds. I think he was white and he had black hair.
And how are you able to come to this description?
Well, like I said, the porch light was on. And so it was pretty easy to see during the struggle, the approximate size and weight of the attacker, as well as the attacker's hair color.
Where did you see this attacker come from?
He came up from behind Barry, and that's over on the side. And that's when he...
And then where did you see the attacker go?
He walked back to his sports car.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Any other questions from defense?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the people call Special Agent Connor Wright to the stand.
Go ahead, you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Agent Connor Wright. Please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the record. Agent Wright, I believe you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, my name is Connor Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T.
And what do you do for work?
I am a special agent in the FBI's Philadelphia office, and I work specifically in the organized crime unit.
Just for some clarification, what does FBI stand for?
Oh, yes. FBI stands for Federal Bureau of Investigation.
How long have you been a special agent in the FBI?
Special agent since 1998, and then specifically in the organized crime unit since 2003.
And what do the duties of a special agent in the organized crime unit entail?
Yeah, I mean, I investigate organized crime. I've done investigations all over the United States, specifically Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. And for the past several years, I've been specifically assigned to the De Bruno crime family.
Have you ever testified as an expert in organized crime before?
Oh yeah, 11 times and then plus this one.
Your Honor, at this time, pursuant to Federal Rules of Evidence 702 and 703, the prosecution tenders Special Agent Wright as an expert in the field of organized crime, as well as the De Bruno crime family specifically.
Defense? Any objection?
No objection to that, Your Honor.
Okay, that's granted.
Agent Wright, let's move now and talk about today's case. How are you involved in it?
So I worked with both state and federal law enforcement to investigate the murder of Barry Capello in connection with the De Bruno crime family.
Now, you've mentioned the De Bruno crime family a few times now. How is the De Bruno crime family involved in today's case?
So Barry Capello, the victim in today's case, he was actually a member of the De Bruno crime family before he was moved into witness protection.
Why was Mr. Capello moved into witness protection?
Yeah, so back in 2018, he testified against fellow members of the De Bruno crime family, and that is among the greatest sins that a member can commit, and it's punishable by death by the family. So after he testified, we put Mr. Capello in witness protection for his own safety.
How does that relate to today's case, if at all?
So one of the members that Mr. Capello testified against in that trial was the family boss, Augie Shepard. And the day before Mr. Capello was murdered, he saw Mr. Shepard. They made eye contact. And this was the first time they'd seen each other in 3 years since that 2018 testimony.
Do you see Mr. Shepard in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you please point to him and describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
Yes, he's sitting right over there. He is in a navy suit and a green tie.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant subject to cross-examination.
The record will so reflect.
Okay, Agent Wright, you mentioned Mr. Capello was put in the witness protection program after he testified in 2018. Were you involved in that process at all?
I was.
How?
So I helped coordinate his relocation alongside Lizzie Bowles. She's a deputy marshal in the Marshal Service Tampa Bay office. We did his relocation together.
What was Mr. Capello's new identity?
So his new identity after he was moved into witness protection in 2018 was Tom Klein. And we gave him a new job as a travel agent in DeLand, Florida.
Where did Tom Klein work as a travel agent?
We gave him his own business. It was called Klein Travel. He was the owner and the sole employee.
Okay, and what about Mrs. Capello?
Well, we moved her into witness protection with her husband. She became Drea Klein. She didn't take employment upon moving.
Where did Mr. and Mrs. Capello stay after moving to DeLand?
Well, we set them up with a new house. It was 2506 Euclid Street in DeLand.
How would you describe the Capello's new neighborhood in DeLand?
Yeah, it was quiet, upscale neighborhood, very safe, not a lot of crime there.
Let's move now and talk about your investigation in this case. How did you first hear of Mr. Capello's death?
I got a call from Deputy Marshal Bowles from the Tampa Bay office, and she told me that Mr. Capello had been killed at his home.
When did you receive that phone call?
It was on June 26, 2021. It was 1:32 a.m.
And after receiving that phone call, what did you do next?
I got to DeLand as soon as I possibly could. I was there at the Capello's house by about noon on that same day, the 26th.
Once you arrived at the Capello's home, what did you observe, if anything?
It was a busy scene. Local police, the FBI, the marshal service. They were already all there. They had preserved the scene properly. I observed a chalk outline in the driveway where Mr. Capello's body was found. And then there were a set of nylite jumper cables right next to that chalk outline. And I photographed them and then I collected them for evidence.
Okay, I'm now referring Agent Wright, the court and opposing counsel, to what has been previously admitted as Exhibit 26. That's on page 53 of the PDF case packet. Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Yes, go ahead.
Agent Wright, do you recognize Exhibit 6 or 26, excuse me?
Yes, so this is the photo I took of the jumper cables that were found next to Mr. Capello's body, and I saw next to the chalk outline.
Okay, Agent Wright, after your initial observations at the scene, what was the next step in your investigation?
So I went to begin speaking with various parties, anyone who could have information they'd heard or seen anything that night, specifically the Capello's neighbors.
Let's start with your conversations with the Capello's neighbors. Did anyone hear or see anything?
Yes, one neighbor did, Bellamy Dembski.
Did you speak with Mr. Dembski?
I did.
Did the information that Mr. Dembski gave you affect your investigation in any way?
Yeah, absolutely.
In what way?
So the information that I got from Mr. Dembski, it just really helped put all of the pieces together for me. So Mr. Dembski's recitation of events is very consistent with the information in Mr. Capello's autopsy report. So it helped confirm that.
What was the conclusion of the autopsy report?
That Mr. Capello was unfortunately strangled to death sometime between midnight and 1 a.m. on June 26, and that the jumper cables that were found near Mr. Capello's body, that was consistent with the injuries found on Mr. Capello's neck and his cause of death of strangulation. Oh, and also the lack of skin found beneath Mr. Capello's fingernails, that was consistent from the attack from behind that Mr. Dembski saw.
Moving on now. So after speaking with Mr. Dembski, what was the next step in your investigation?
So shortly after speaking to Mr. Dembski, I learned about a voicemail that Mr. Capello had left Deputy Marshal Bowles' office phone the day before he was murdered, so June 25th, and the voicemail was really concerning.
You said the voicemail was left the day before his murder. Why were you just hearing of it at this point in your investigation?
So Mr. Capello had actually called Deputy Marshal Bowles' office phone, but unfortunately she was out in the field that day, so she didn't hear it until she got back to the office. So she heard it the same day I did on June 26, unfortunately after the murder.
Do you remember what time that voicemail was left?
Yes, it was left at 12:50 p.m. on June 25th.
So when listening to the voicemail, how did you know the voice was Mr. Capello's?
Well, I helped relocate him, so I knew Mr. Capello very well. I recognized his voice, and the call also came from Klein Travel Agency. Again, he was the owner and the only employee, so it confirmed that Mr. Capello made the call.
Your Honor, I'm now referring Agent Wright, the court and opposing counsel, to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 13. This is an audio file which can be found on the Google Drive along with the case packet. Agent Wright, are you familiar with Exhibit 13?
I am.
What is it?
That's that voicemail that Mr. Capello left on Deputy Marshal Bowles' office phone.
Is Exhibit 13 a accurate and true recording of the voicemail that you reviewed prior to today's trial?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 13 into evidence.
Defense, any objections?
Objection hearsay.
Sustained to hearsay?
Your Honor, if I may be heard.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes.
This voicemail, while it is hearsay, it does fall under two exceptions. First being the present sense impression under 803.1. And under that rule, a statement must be made during or immediately after the event or condition is only limited to describing or explaining the event. Here, Mr. Capello made the call to Deputy Marshal Bowles immediately after seeing and making eye contact with Mr. Shepard. And in the voicemail, Mr. Capello simply describes and explains this encounter. And in the voicemail, it is clear that it is made immediately after seeing Mr. Capello, as if I may make an offer of proof.
The objection is still sustained. Ask your next question.
Your Honor, may I still be heard?
On what issue?
Under the second exception,
What is that?
under Rule 804B6.
Go ahead.
That rule admits statements against a party who wrongfully caused the speaker to be unavailable as a witness if the party did so intending to achieve that result. Here, under the advisory committee note on Rule 804B6, this finding should be made by a preponderance of the evidence under Rule 104A, which can be evaluated based on evidence presented at trial. And here, Mr. Capello is unavailable as a witness because he is dead. And as the prosecution's theory of the case, he is dead due to Mr. Shepard's actions. And Mr. Shepard's intent of that result is evident in the fact that Mr. Capello went into witness protection, fearing retaliation for Mr. Shepard, as well as the fact that it is the prosecution's contention that Mr. Shepard not only killed Mr. Capello, but that he did so with the intent to retaliate against him for testifying at trial, as well as this witness is qualified as an expert in organized crime and the De Bruno crime family, and so it is proper expert testimony under FRE 703.
Ms. Cook, the objection to hearsay is sustained. Ask your next question.
After listening to this voicemail from Mr. Capello, what was the next step in your investigation?
So my next step was to determine Mr. Shepard's location at the time of the murder, to determine if he was truly in DeLand.
Was Mr. Shepard in DeLand at the time of the murder?
Absolutely.
How did you make that determination?
I was able to confirm his location in DeLand through travel records, receipts from restaurants and accommodations, car rentals.
Objection, hearsay, lacks personal knowledge.
Overruled.
Agent Wright, how did you make that determination that Mr. Shepard was in DeLand at the time of the murder?
Yes, so I confirmed his location in DeLand with travel records, receipts from restaurants and accommodations, Airbnb, car rental records, and then I also talked to his child who confirmed that Mr. Shepard was in DeLand with them for a college tour.
You mentioned evidence involving a car rental. What evidence are you referring to?
So that I was able to determine that Mr. Shepard had rented a dark green Ferrari, and I contacted the car rental company to inquire about the jumper cables that I found next to Mr. Capello's body.
I'm now referring the court and opposing counsel to what has been previously marked as exhibits 10 and 19 on pages 38 and 46 of the case packet. Agent Wright, let me know when you arrive at exhibit 10.
Yes, I'm there.
Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, so exhibit 10 is a letter I received from Platinum Rentals regarding Mr. Shepard's rental car, that Ferrari, and it was in response to a subpoena.
Does exhibit 10 fairly and accurately represent the letter that you received from Platinum Rentals?
Yes, it does.
Now turning to exhibit 19 on page 46. Just let me know when you get there.
Okay. Yes, I'm there.
Do you recognize this exhibit?
I do.
What is it?
This is a photo of that Ferrari that Mr. Shepard rented from Platinum Rentals.
Is this a fairly and accurate picture of the car that Mr. Shepard rented?
Yes, absolutely. That's the same one.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit exhibit 10 and 19 into evidence.
We'll take them one at a time. Any objections to number 10, Mr. Slizik?
No objections.
10 is admitted. What about number 19?
No objections.
Number 19 is admitted.
Agent Wright, in looking to exhibit 10, what was this letter in response to?
So I sent a subpoena to Platinum Rentals because we wanted to be able to look at the car that Mr. Shepard had rented. So we found out that it was a dark green 2021 Ferrari, and that was the letter we received in response to that subpoena.
Your Honor, permission to publish Exhibit 19.
Yes, that's granted.
Agent Wright, is this the car that you're referring to?
Yes, that's that same dark green Ferrari.
And why was what car Mr. Shepard rented important, if at all?
Yeah, so it's important for a few reasons. But number one, I wanted to see if the eyewitness, Mr. Dembski's description of the car, I wanted to see if it matched with the car that Mr. Shepard was driving while he was in DeLand. It did, in fact, match. It's a dark green sports car. And then second, I wanted to see if that car was missing jumper cables, since that was the murder weapon that was used to kill Mr. Capello.
Were you able to determine, was the Ferrari Mr. Shepard rented missing jumper cables?
It was missing jumper cables, yes.
And how do you know that the jumper cables were missing from the rental car?
I know it was missing because Platinum Rentals, in that letter in response to the subpoena, they said that there were no jumper cables any longer in that vehicle.
In addition to the jumper cables, was there any other evidence that was pivotal in your investigation in this case?
Yeah, so there were 4 shoe prints found in the grass outside Mr. Capello's house. And so it was interesting. They indicated movement from the driveway to the side of the home and then back to the driveway. And based on how fresh they were, we were able to determine they were made on either June 25th or 26th.
What is the significance of those shoe prints, if any?
So they were measured as men's shoes, approximately size 11. And then based on the depth of the impression, the man wearing the shoes weighed anywhere between 170 to 190 pounds.
Why is that significant?
It's significant because when we arrested Mr. Shepard in connection with this case, he weighed 182 pounds, and he did in fact wear size 11 shoes.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Agent Wright.
Good afternoon.
You believe that Augie Shepard wanted Barry Capello dead.
Absolutely, and he succeeded.
You have no evidence that Augie Shepard was actively searching for Barry Capello.
Actively searching? No.
You have no evidence that anybody in the DeBruno crime family was ordered to look for Barry Capello.
No, they don't tend to publicize that information.
Well, you're an expert in the DeBruno crime family,
Absolutely.
so you know the inner workings of the DeBruno crime family.
As best an outsider can, yes.
And with all your knowledge, you have no information that shows that the DeBruno crime family was actively searching for Barry Capello.
Right. I don't believe they were actively searching, correct?
And you have no evidence that a hit was ever ordered on Barry Capello.
Correct.
Now, you were part of the team that helped relocate Barry.
I was.
You believe you did a good job.
I do like to believe that, correct?
You made sure that there was no public information linking Tom or Drea Klein to their Euclid Avenue home.
Yes, that's the goal of witness protection, yep.
And you found no evidence that they ever reached out to anybody in their past.
Per their cell phone records, correct?
But you found no other evidence that would indicate that they reached out to their past.
Yeah, we had no evidence of that.
You have no idea how Augie Shepard could have found that home.
I believe that he saw Mr. Capello through a window and then deduced his address from that.
But you don't know how he was able to deduce his address.
No, not exactly.
Now, you believe, though, he drove about 6 miles from his Airbnb to the Capello's home.
Approximately, yes.
Now, in all those 6 miles of road, you never found any camera footage of a green Ferrari driving that night.
No, not that I recall.
You never found any eyewitness who can recall seeing a green Ferrari that night.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, under the rules in this case, any questions whether Agent Wright specifically did or did not do something that are not contained in his investigative report are inadmissible during trial, as Agent Wright cannot go outside of that report in material facts.
So what is your objection?
Your Honor, it was just to the rules of the competition.
Okay, so noted, move along.
Now, you never found any eyewitnesses that can recall seeing a green Ferrari the night of the murder.
No, not that I recall. And it was past midnight.
Yes, and you never found anybody who saw Augie Shepard leave his Airbnb that night.
I couldn't find an eyewitness, no.
Now, I want to talk about some other potential suspects. You know that there were 3 burglaries that happened in the Capello's neighborhood.
Yeah, months before, and no one was harmed, but yeah.
So you never considered those burglars potential suspects?
I investigated all potential leads in this case, and it wasn't relevant. It was completely different crimes.
So did you investigate those burglaries?
I don't work for the DeLand Police Department, so I did not investigate the burglaries.
So you don't know if any of those burglars fit the description of the attacker?
No, not relevant. Again, totally different crimes.
You never took any inventory of Barry Capello's trunk to see if anything was missing?
No, it wasn't relevant to my investigation.
You didn't feel that investigating burglaries were relevant at all?
This wasn't a burglary, so I'd agree with you.
But you can't be sure nothing was stolen.
This was a murder. I mean, a life was stolen.
That didn't answer my question. You have no evidence that nothing was stolen.
I don't know if anything besides a life was stolen, correct?
You never considered that this murder could have been drug related?
There were no drugs found, so no, I did not.
But you know that Barry Capello was caught selling heroin back in 2017.
I know he was caught. He was never convicted.
He was never convicted because he made a plea deal with the FBI.
Correct, and that's why he's in witness protection.
But he was dealing heroin.
I don't know that.
Improper character evidence.
Sustain?
Your Honor, may be heard.
No, I sustain, move along.
You never considered Adriana Capello to be a suspect?
No, she had no motive. There was no reason to suspect her.
You believe she had no motive, but you know that she had been in arguments with her husband in the past.
I argue with my husband all the time, sir, but yes, I did know that.
You also know that she slapped her husband across the face.
I know
Object.
that.
Improper character evidence, Your Honor.
Overruled. If she knows, she can answer.
You know that she slapped her husband across the face.
I'm aware that Mr. Dembski said that that occurred once years ago. Yes.
You're also aware that she said, if it weren't for you, I could have my life back.
I'm aware that Mr. Dembski said that that was said once years ago. Yes.
Yet you never thought to consider a suspect.
As I said previously, she had no motive. It was not relevant to the investigation. Augie Shepard is the person who killed Mr. Capello.
Now, I want to talk about what Augie Shepard was doing on June 25th. From the time he arrived in DeLand to around 11:30 p.m., he's with his daughter, Lauren.
Yes, that's correct.
You spoke to Lauren,
I did.
and she told you all the locations that they went to.
Yes, she did.
And you also checked Mr. Shepard's cell phone data.
I checked the one cell phone, correct?
Well, you never found any other cell phones.
No, but it's very common for people in the mafia to have multiple cell phones, so we only had access to one.
but you never found any other ones.
Unfortunately not. We suspect it was a burner phone.
You have no evidence that Augie Shepard has ever used a burner phone.
Not besides my expertise in organized crime and how mob bosses operate.
Now, from the GPS of his cell phone data, it confirmed that they went to all the locations that Lauren told you that they went to.
That's correct.
Now, Barry Capello, he went home from work about 2 p.m.
Yes, that's correct.
You have no evidence he was followed on his way home.
I do not.
You know that Augie Shepard was on a tour of Stetson at 2 p.m.
His cell phone was on a tour of Stetson at 2 p.m. Yes.
Well, you know that, so you never confirmed with the university that he was on that tour?
He was on that tour with Lauren with his cell phone. Yes.
Thank you. Now, you know that there's no other DeBruno crime family members in the Florida area except for Augie Shepard.
That's correct.
Now let's talk about what was found at the scene. You found some footprints,
4 footprints.
but you never took any photos of that footprint.
I did not take photos of the footprints myself. My forensic team investigated them.
You never could, you can't tell what brand of shoe made those shoe prints.
Not that I recall.
Is that a no?
You're correct. I don't know the brand of shoe.
Now, any person wearing a men's size 11, weighing 170 to 190 pounds, would have made identical footprints to the ones found at the scene.
Yes, someone just like Mr. Shepard. Yeah.
Now, the cables found at the scene, they were Nylite brand.
That's correct.
Those cables are sold nationwide.
They are sold nationwide and they are in the rental vehicles that Platinum Vehicles rents out.
They're sold online also.
Yes,
They're even sold in stores like Walmart.
correct.
The murder weapon found at the scene, it never said Platinum Rentals on it, did it?
It did not, but those were the same jumper cables missing from Mr. Shepard's Ferrari.
Well, you know that 18 other people rented that Ferrari.
Before and after Mr. Shepard, correct.
And Platinum Rentals told you that they don't know who lost those cables or when they were lost.
They don't do a routine check of the jumper cables after every person rents. That's correct.
So they don't know when they were lost.
Not necessarily correct.
You have no definitive proof that those cables were in the car when Augie Shepard came into possession.
That's correct, but they sure weren't in there after.
You never found any fingerprints on that murder weapon.
We did not.
You never found any of Augie Shepard's DNA on that murder weapon.
No, none besides Mr. Capello's.
You never found any blood in the Ferrari.
No, there was no reason to suspect that there'd be any bleeding involved in this case.
You never found any of Barry Capello's DNA in that Ferrari.
There'd be no reason, but you're correct.
You found no forensic evidence whatsoever in that car.
It had been professionally cleaned after Mr. Shepard had returned it and other people had rented it. So you're correct. There was no forensic evidence to find there.
You never talked to the people who cleaned it though.
No, not relevant.
So you wouldn't know if they saw any blood or not.
I would assume it would have gotten brought up, but you're correct. I don't know that.
Now, you never found any of Augie Shepard's fingerprints at the scene.
No, I mean, but gloves are pretty easy to come by.
We never found any gloves in possession of Augie Shepard.
No, we did not find gloves.
You never found any muddy shoes in the possession of Augie Shepard.
We did not. I don't believe there was mud involved.
And you never found any of Augie Shepard's DNA at the scene.
That's correct.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, State, do you have any other witnesses?
Your Honor, may I do a brief redirect?
No. Not of this witness. Any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break and then we'll start the defense side.
Bailiff, when we have a brief time check,
Yes. Oh, sorry. So the prosecution has 29:11 left, and then defense has 30:08 left.
And bailiff, you're going to take the 10-minute break. You'll alert us when it's time. Okay, thank you.
I will, no problem.
I'm ready when you are.
Perfect timing, Judge. There was about 45 seconds left, so if everyone is ready to come back.
Is defense ready? Call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Ms. Lauren Shepard to the stand.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Shepard.
Good afternoon.
I want to start off by talking about why you're here today. First, can you introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Lauren Shepard.
Do you know Augie Shepard?
Of course, that's my dad.
What do your parents do for work?
They're both entrepreneurs. My dad owns a waste management company, and my mom has her own business that builds homes.
Can you tell us about your relationship with your dad?
We're really close.
Where did you go to tour colleges?
We took a college tour trip in Florida. We flew into Miami, then we rented a car and drove up the coast, and we flew back home to Philadelphia from Daytona Beach.
Who made the plans for the trip?
I did. He let me make all the plans.
What kind of car did you use on the trip?
We had rented a green Ferrari.
Did you see any jumper cables in this car?
No, I didn't see any.
Well, let's go back to talking about the logistics of the trip with your dad. How long were you in Florida?
We were in Florida from June 21st to June 26th, so about 5 days.
And within those 5 days, how many colleges did you visit?
We went to 3.
Which college did you visit on June 25th, 2021?
Stetson University. It's in DeLand, Florida. That was the last one we saw.
Is there a reason that you were looking at schools in Florida?
Yeah, I have a friend named Jackie. She was a year ahead of me and she was going to Stetson, so I was excited to check it out.
Let's talk about when you first got to DeLand. What time did you arrive?
We got to our Airbnb around 10 a.m.
Who chose the Airbnb?
I did. It was in the best location, just 10 minutes from the university.
What did you do after arriving at the Airbnb around 10 a.m.?
We settled in and then we left for lunch. I had made a reservation for 12 o'clock.
Where did you go for lunch?
This little restaurant called Positano's.
Why there?
My friend Jackie, she recommended it, and it was also really close to campus, which was perfect because we had a tour to tour the campus for 1 o'clock. So it gave us about an hour to eat before.
So after you finished up at the restaurant, where did you go?
I wanted ice cream. So we walked just a few doors down to Witt's Frozen Custard, and we had a few minutes before our 1 p.m. tour.
Did you stop anywhere on your way to Witt's Frozen Custard?
No, we walked straight over. It was like a minute.
Can you describe the establishments that you walked past in order to get to Witt's Frozen Custard?
No, I wasn't paying any attention to them. We walked over really fast. Even though we had lunch, we still were in a time crunch, so we went straight there.
Do you know who owns Klein Travel?
No, I don't.
Does the name Tom Klein sound familiar?
No, I don't know who that is.
Does the name Barry Capello sound familiar?
Of course, that's my Uncle Barry. He and his wife, Adriana, they were like family. My little brother, Augie, and I, we called him Uncle Barry.
What's your relationship? What's your dad's relationship like with Mr. Capello?
They were really close. My dad gave Uncle Barry a job a long time ago, but he was so much more in that. Uncle Barry and his wife, they would spend every holiday with us.
What changed?
We stopped seeing him.
Why?
Well, he was arrested after being caught with drugs.
Going back to June 25th, when you were walking past Witt's Frozen Custard, did you ever see Mr. Capello?
No way. That would have been a whole scene.
Why do you say that?
My dad and Uncle Barry had a major falling out after his arrest for drugs. My dad made it pretty clear he never wanted to see him again. It devastated him.
Do you know whether your dad saw Mr. Capello that day?
Objection.
No, I don't think so.
Hang on, there's an objection. What is the objection?
Speculation.
Overruled.
Do you know whether your dad saw Mr. Capello that day?
No, I don't think so.
How come?
Well, his behavior was totally normal that whole time. It didn't change.
After you finished up at Witt's Frozen Custard, where did you go?
We went straight to Stetson University to make it just in time for the tour. We were on campus from like 1 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Your Honor, permission to display Exhibit 11 constructively to the witness for foundational purposes?
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Shepard, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's the letter that I received from Stetson University just a few days after we toured it.
How do you recognize it?
It was addressed to me.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction?
Yes, it is.
At this time, we offer Exhibit 11 into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Permission to publish to the jury?
Yes.
What's the subject line of this letter?
My visit to Stetson on June 25th, 2021.
Can you describe the contents of the letter?
It's a standard admissions letter. It just thanked me for visiting and said, I enjoyed meeting you and your father, and then it went into the school selling points.
What did you and your dad do after finishing up at Stetson around 5 p.m.?
We went back to the Airbnb to hang out for a bit. We had done a lot of walking during that tour, so it was nice to take a breather for a couple of hours.
What were you doing back at the Airbnb?
I was in the living room on my laptop.
What was your dad doing at the Airbnb?
He was there in the living room with me, but I wasn't really focused on what he was doing to pass the time. I know a little bit after we got to the Airbnb while I was on my laptop, he told me to put my headphones on and he made a phone call.
Do you know what that call was about?
No, I was on my laptop with the headphones on.
You mentioned you and your dad stayed in the living room. Did either of you ever leave that space?
Just a couple minutes to change for dinner, like 5 or so. But other than that, we were hanging out in the living room the whole time.
When did you leave for dinner?
We left around 7:30 for a reservation I had made at the Bain Steakhouse for 8 o'clock that night.
So then what did you do after dinner?
We went straight back to the Airbnb and we got back around 10 p.m.
Do you know what your dad did when you returned at 10:30 p.m.?
He went to sleep.
How do you know he went to sleep?
I walked past his room and he had his door open. His snoring could be heard from a mile away. I really don't know how my mom deals with it.
Well, what did you do when your dad went to sleep?
I was going to sneak out to go to a party with my friend Jackie.
What time was that?
About 11:30.
Did you ever tell your dad that you were going to the party?
No way.
How come?
Well, we had been touring the campus all day and doing a lot, so I didn't want to wake him. We had to leave at like 5 a.m. the next day to make our 7 a.m. flight back home, and the party was pretty late, so I just wanted to sneak out and come back while he was asleep so he wouldn't know.
Did you ever bring your phone with you to this party?
Of course.
Did your dad ever contact you while you were out of the house?
No, I figured he was sleeping, but thankfully he didn't wake up and see I wasn't there.
What time did you get back from the party?
I took an Uber back around 3 a.m.
Where was your dad when you got back?
He was in the same spot as when I left, just snoozing away.
Did you have any reason to believe that your dad ever left the Airbnb while you were gone?
No, he was sleeping when I left and sleeping when I got back. The snoring was so loud.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. If I may take one moment.
Go ahead.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Shepherd. I'd like to begin by talking about a little bit about what you spoke about on direct examination. You said that you didn't know what buildings you passed on your walk from Positano's to Witt's Frozen Custard.
I wasn't paying attention to them.
So that's a yes.
Yes, I wasn't paying that much attention to them.
But you do know that you walked past Klein Travel Agency.
Yeah,
Now, I'd like to turn and talk about the tour you went on with your father. You began by going to University of Miami.
yes,
You drove up the coast to University of Florida at Gainesville
yes,
and ended the tour in Stetson.
yes, we did.
That's located in DeLand, Florida.
It is.
And for this trip, you rented a vehicle,
Yes.
a 2021 Ferrari.
I don't know what year, but it was a Ferrari.
Your Honor, permission to publish Exhibit 19.
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Shepherd, this is the car that you rented.
It looks like it.
This is the car that you and your father drove around Florida.
It looks like it, yes.
Now, I'd like to turn and talk about what you did specifically in DeLand, Florida. After arriving at the Airbnb, you went to lunch
Yes,
at Positano's.
yes,
You received a receipt for that trip.
yes, we did.
If I showed you that receipt today, you would recognize it?
Yes,
Your Honor, permission to share my screen with what is Exhibit 15.
Go ahead.
Ms. Shepherd, this is the receipt you received from Positano's,
I believe so.
and it's a true and accurate copy of the receipt you and your father received.
I think it is.
Your Honor, permission to admit Exhibit 15 into evidence.
Any objections from the people?
No objections to Exhibit 15, Your Honor.
Exhibit 15 is admitted.
Permission to publish for the jury.
Yes, go ahead.
Now, Ms. Shepherd, this receipt is dated June 25th, 2021,
Yes,
with the timestamp of 12:47 p.m.
that's what it says.
Now, after you ate at Positano's, you walked down the street
Yes,
and you ate at Witt's Frozen Custard.
yes, I did.
You received a receipt from Witt's Frozen Custard.
Yeah.
And you'd recognize that receipt if I showed it to you.
Probably, yeah.
Your Honor, permission to share my screen with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 16.
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Shepherd, Exhibit 16 is a copy of the receipt from Witt's Frozen Custard,
It looks like it.
the receipt you and your father received.
I think so.
And this is a true and accurate copy of that receipt.
I think so.
Your Honor, permission to admit Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Any objections to 16?
No objection, Your Honor.
16 is admitted.
Your Honor, permission to publish Exhibit 16 for the jury.
Yes, go ahead.
Now, Ms. Shepherd, we're looking at a copy of the receipt you received from Witt's Frozen Custard.
Yes,
This receipt is also dated June 25th, 2021,
it is.
with a timestamp of 12:52 p.m.
Yes,
Now, I'd like to go through that walk specifically. Your Honor, permission to share my screen with Exhibit 21.
Yes, go ahead.
Ms. Shepherd, this is a map of the walk you and your father took,
Yes,
starting at Positano's
yes.
and going to Witt's Frozen Custard.
Yep, it took about a minute.
And this is a true and accurate representation of that walk you took.
I think so.
Your Honor, permission to admit Exhibit 21 into evidence?
Any objections to 21?
No objections, Your Honor.
21 is admitted.
Your Honor, permission to publish for the jury?
Yes, go ahead.
Now, Ms. Shepherd, we're looking at the walk that you took from Positano's to Witt's Frozen Custard.
Yes,
So you would have walked past Klein Travel Agency,
according to the map, yes.
and according to your testimony, you walked past Klein Travel Agency.
Yes,
And you would have been on that walk between 12:47 and 12:52, correct?
yes.
Now, I'd like to turn and talk about what you did after your tour of Stetson. You and your father arrived at the Airbnb at 5 p.m.
It was around that time, yes.
and you sat in the living room until 7:30 p.m.
Yes, but we also got changed for dinner.
You were only apart for those 5 minutes while you were getting changed.
Yeah, it was about 5 minutes.
So outside of those 5 minutes, you were together for over 2 hours.
I think so, yes.
And earlier you testified that you had headphones in during this time.
I did.
And you had your headphones in because your father told you to put your headphones in.
Yes,
As your father made a phone call.
yes,
In fact, your father was on the phone the whole time you were at the Airbnb.
no,
Is your testimony today that your father was not on his phone the whole time you're at the Airbnb?
he was on the phone most of the time, but like I said, we got changed, so not the whole time.
So that is a no, he wasn't on the phone the whole time?
No, he was not on the phone the whole time.
And you gave a statement to detectives in this case,
I did.
and that you were to be truthful and honest in that statement?
Yes,
And if I showed you that statement today, you would recognize it.
probably.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness what has been pre-marked as their deposition, which is Exhibit 3 in this case.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, we do object to this hearsay.
Overruled.
Now, Ms. Shepherd, this is a page from your statement.
Yes, it is.
Now, I'd like you to follow along as I read aloud. Starting with line 12. What did you each do? Your answer, I was on my computer. Dad was talking on the phone the whole time. Did I read that?
Objection, misleading the jury.
Overruled.
I will repeat my question. Starting with line 12. What did you each do? Your answer, I was on my computer. Dad was talking on the phone the whole time. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, but I believe in where it says line 7 says the entire time, there was probably 5 minutes when we got ready for dinner, but otherwise we were together the entire time. And in that time we were getting ready, I don't think he was on the phone.
Ms. Shepherd, I'm sorry, that wasn't my question. My question was, did I read lines 12 and 13 correctly?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Ms. Shepherd, did I read lines 12 and 13 correctly?
Yes,
Now, I'd like to turn and talk about what you told detectives you did that evening. When you first spoke to detectives, you weren't entirely truthful.
yes, but I corrected myself.
You originally told them you were at the Airbnb the entire night.
I did.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Ms. Shepherd, you told detectives you were at the Airbnb the entire night.
I did.
And then detectives showed you text messages.
Yes, my text with Jackie.
Those text messages showed you leaving the apartment at 11:30 p.m.
Yeah, it helped me remember.
So after that, you revised your story.
As I said, I corrected myself. Yes,
And then you told the detectives you arrived home at 12:30.
I think so.
However, that wasn't true either, was it?
As I said, I corrected myself.
So that's a no.
I'm sorry, I'm confused by your question.
When you told detectives you originally got home at 12:30, that wasn't correct either.
No, it wasn't. I corrected myself after that.
So that's a no.
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
Ms. Shepherd, so that is a no to my question.
I think so, yeah, no.
Now, the detectives then showed you a copy of your Uber receipt.
Yeah, it helped me remember. It was so long ago.
That Uber receipt was at 3:08 a.m.
Yes, I think so.
Now, I want to talk about what actually happened that evening. You originally left the Airbnb at 11:30 p.m.
Yes,
and you didn't return home until after 3 a.m.
it was like 3 a.m.
So you were gone from the Airbnb for over 3.5 hours.
No, 3 hours and 8 minutes, as you just said.
You left at 11:30
Yes,
and you arrived home at 3 a.m.
yes.
So
Or
that is-
around, yes.
That is 3.5 hours, isn't it, Ms. Shepherd?
I don't know.
You don't know if there's 3.5 hours between 11:30 p.m. and 3 a.m.?
I think so.
Now let's turn and discuss your family a little bit. Your father works in waste management,
He was the owner of a business.
and Mr. Capello was an employee of that business.
He gave him a job at one point, but I don't know what he did.
But you know that Mr. Capello was an employee of your father's waste management company,
Yes, at one point.
and you called Mr. Capello Uncle Barry.
I did.
Your father called Mr. Capello Uncle Barry.
No, I don't know why he would do that.
Is it your testimony today that your father did not call Barry Capello Uncle Barry?
I think we all knew him as Uncle Barry, but I don't know why my dad would call his friend Uncle Barry.
Is that a no? Your father did not call Mr. Capello Uncle Barry?
I believe we all referred to him as Uncle Barry. We knew him as Uncle Barry, but I don't know why my dad would call him Uncle Barry.
So yes, your father did refer to Barry Capello as Uncle Barry.
He did refer to him as Uncle Barry, yes.
Now, your father's demeanor towards Mr. Capello changed in 2017?
Objection, lack of foundation.
I'm gonna admonish the witness, if there's an objection, you have to wait for me to rule on it. So the objection is overruled.
Your father's demeanor towards Mr. Capello changed in 2017?
I think it was 2018.
And that was because Mr. Capello testified against your cousin?
It was because my cousin was convicted.
Due to Mr. Capello's testimony?
His testimony was part of that conviction, yes.
After this, your father said, Uncle Barry is a rat.
Yes.
Your father said, I never want to hear that rat's name again.
Yes, he did.
Your father also said, he is dead to our family.
Yeah, he was very upset.
So that's a yes, your father did say that?
Yes, he did.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Defense, do you have another witness?
Your Honor, if we may, we do have a brief redirect if permitted.
Very brief.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Shepherd, on cross-examination, you were asked a lot about your father and Mr. Capello's relationship. What happened that prompted their growing apart?
My Uncle Barry was arrested for drugs.
And you were specifically asked about a quote that your dad said. When did he say that?
It was back in 2018, so a little bit ago.
Did you take that quote literally?
No, he was definitely just upset about my uncle's,
Objection.
my cousin's conviction.
What is the objection?
Relevance.
Overruled.
So, Ms. Shepherd, did you take that quote literally?
No, my father was just upset. My cousin, his only nephew, was just convicted. He was so young.
And lastly, did your dad ever say anything else about Mr. Capello after that one quote 4 years ago?
No, I never heard anything else. We just carried on with our lives.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. No further questions at this time, Your Honor. May this witness be excused?
Yes, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Raylan Gibbons.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gibbons.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Yes, my name is Raylan Gibbons.
What do you do for work, Ms. Gibbons?
I currently own and operate my own private investigation firm.
What kind of work do you do as a private investigator?
Well, I mostly specialize in finding missing people.
Have you always been a private investigator?
No. Prior to this, I was a U.S. Deputy Marshal for about 30 years.
What were your duties as a U.S. Deputy Marshal?
Well, I did field work as a U.S. Marshal, and then I also worked in the Witness Protection Program.
What kind of field work did you do?
As a part of my field work, I personally tracked down more than 100 fugitives.
You also mentioned the witness protection. Can you explain exactly what that is?
Yes. Basically, when somebody testifies in a case and they fear retaliation, we equip them with new names, we cover up their old identity, and we place them into new homes. It's our job to make it almost impossible, if not difficult, for anybody to find them.
What was your role in the witness protection program?
I personally re-coordinated new identities for over 100 people.
Have you won any awards for that work?
I have. I won the Director Ribbon for Excellence in Field Work as well as Witness Protection.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to formally tender Ms. Gibbons as an expert in witness protection and locating missing persons.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor, no objection to that. However, if it does go into criminal investigative techniques, I will re-raise the objection.
Okay, you may proceed, Mr. Snizik.
Now, Ms. Gibbons, is the witness protection program 100% effective?
It's effective, but it's not 100% effective.
What might cause it to fail?
Well, as we prompt people with new identities, we tell them to not reach out to individuals in their past and give them their name. And if they do that or release their new phone number, they can be tracked down.
Now, how did you become familiar with this case?
Initially, I heard about it when it became national news, and then I wrote an article about it, about my conclusions about the FBI's investigation.
Now, what happened after you wrote that article?
I was contacted and retained by counsel.
Are you being compensated for your time?
Yes, I am.
What effect, if any, did that have on any of your opinions?
Absolutely none. So like I said, I wrote this opinion and then I was contacted by counsel. And after I was retained, I keep the same opinions that I have.
Thank you. And how did you become familiar with the evidence in this case?
I was given all the documents in this case, which was the exhibits as well as the FBI's investigation.
Now, did you ever see if it was possible to track down the Capellos?
I did.
How'd you go about doing that?
So first, I used public records. I wanted to see if there's anything linking the Capellos to their new identity as the Kleins. And then I used the Wayback Machine to see if there was anything tying them again from their old identity to their new identity.
Now, you just mentioned Wayback Machine. Can you explain to the members of the jury what that is?
Yes. Basically, it allows you to utilize the internet and look up a specific day in the past, and anything will come up on that day. So for instance, I searched June 25th, 2021 to see if there's anything tying Barry Capello to Tom Klein.
Were you able to find anything linking Barry Capello to Tom Klein?
I was not.
Were you able to find anything linking Barry and Adriana Capello to their 2506 Euclid Avenue home?
I was not.
Were you able to find anything linking Tom or Drea Klein to that home?
No, I could not find anything.
Did you find any evidence that the Capellos had ever reached out to anybody in their past?
No, I did not.
Did you find any evidence that Barry was followed on his way home from work?
No, the timeline just simply doesn't match up. I saw a letter from Stetson College that showed that the defendant was at Stetson at that time, and Barry Capello left at 2 p.m. that day.
Now, if Barry was never followed, do you think it would have been possible to find their home?
No,
What if someone knew that Barry Capello was Tom Klein? Would they be able to find that home?
no. Like I said, even if they knew, there was no information on the internet that linked Tom Klein to their Euclid home. Therefore, they would have been able to find it.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gibbons. I'd like to begin by talking about your involvement in today's case. You were hired by Mr. Shepard and his attorneys to look into today's case.
Yes,
You were hired on April 1st.
yes, I was.
Defense counsel provided you all exhibits,
Yes,
and you wrote an op-ed that contains your opinions as to this case.
yes, I did.
You wrote that on March 1st,
Yes,
a month before being hired by defense counsel
yes,
and before receiving exhibits.
yes,
And as you testified on direct, you based your opinions in your op-ed on what you saw on the news.
I utilized public record as well, yes.
And none of your opinions changed from when you wrote the op-ed to now.
No, none of the evidence that I was prompted with provided me anything to change my opinion.
Defense counsel is paying you to testify today,
Yes, they are.
paying you $10,000.
Not only to testify, but for everything that I've done in this trial, yes.
Right, I'd like to talk about your investigation in this case. During your investigation, you never went to the land.
No, I'm not the witness for you guys.
As an investigator that specializes in finding missing persons, going to the place where a person is thought to be located is not important.
I wouldn't say that. I was already prompted with Agent Wright's investigation, so I didn't feel the need to go to DeLand, Florida at that point. Plus, I was retained about a year after.
Right, okay. As a past US Marshal, you know that keeping identities off the internet is a top priority, right?
It is a top priority, yes.
And during your investigation, you never took into account the distance between Klein Chapel and Mr. Capello's home,
No,
or the distance from Mr. Shepard's Airbnb to Mr. Capello's home.
no, because there was no other evidence that was supported how he would have found that home.
You would agree that it would be harder to find someone in a town of 50 than 500,000.
I don't know.
You would agree that it's easier to find someone if you're close in distance, right?
It honestly depends. I don't know.
Moving on now, you never took into account the size of DeLand either, did you?
I based my opinions and I stay firm in those opinions.
You never did any investigation beyond what you could do while sitting at your desk.
Like I said, I have my opinions and I stay firm in those opinions.
Is that a yes to my question?
Counsel, I made my opinions and I stand firm in those opinions.
During your investigation in this case, the only investigation that you did was from your desk, correct?
The only investigation I did was from my desk.
On your computer.
Well, I was also prompted with the exhibits and everything in this case. And based off my investigation, yes.
Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about your conclusions in this case. One of your conclusions is that there's some evidence against Mr. Shepard that you cannot explain.
Yes.
let's break that down a little bit. You characterize one piece of that evidence as the missing jumper cables.
Yes.
And to clarify, when you say missing jumper cables, you're referring to the jumper cables that were missing from Mr. Shepard's rental car.
Yes, because 18 people had said they didn't see them in there, so yes.
But you cannot explain why they were missing.
No, with 18 different people, I wouldn't be able to explain that.
So that's a yes to my question.
Yes, I cannot explain due to 18 different people having that car.
The jumper cables missing from Mr. Shepard's rental car were the same brand as the ones used to strangle Mr. Capello?
Yes, that are also sold nationally, yes.
Ms. Gibbons, another piece of evidence that you cannot explain is, to use your own words, the eyewitness description that sounds a lot like Shepard.
Yes, it sounds a lot like an average built individual. Shepard could be one of them, yes.
Ms. Gibbons, I appreciate you wanting to explain your answers. However, council will have some time for you to explain them on redirect. A simple yes or no for these questions is perfectly fine. Thank you. So let's talk about that eyewitness description a little bit. The eyewitness, Mr. Dembski, described the suspect as being about 5'11".
That's what he said.
Mr. Shepard is 5'10".
Yes.
Mr. Dembski described the suspect as weighing about 180 pounds.
Objection hearsay.
Overruled.
That's what he said.
Mr. Shepard is 182 pounds.
Yes.
Mr. Dembski described the suspect as having black hair.
That's what he said, yes.
Mr. Shepard has black hair.
Yes.
Mr. Dembski described the suspect as being white.
Yes.
Mr. Shepard is white.
Objection cumulative.
Overruled.
Mr. Shepard is white.
I don't like to be subjective to people's races.
You would agree that Mr. Shepard is white, Ms. Gibbons, correct?
He has fair skin, yes.
Mr. Dembski also described the suspect's car as an expensive sports car.
A black one, if I'm not mistaken.
And that it was a dark color.
Yes.
Mr. Shepard's rental car was a 2021 Ferrari, correct?
A green one, yes.
That answers my next question. It was a dark green color.
Yes.
You would agree that a Ferrari is an expensive sports car.
Sure.
Let's move on now to the next piece of evidence that you cannot explain. You characterize this next piece of evidence as, to use your own words again, the coincidental timing of Capello being murdered right after being in the same place where Shepard had lunch.
Objection hearsay.
Overruled.
I can ask that question again. You characterize this next piece of evidence that you cannot explain as, to use your own words again, the coincidental timing of Capello being murdered right after being in the same place where Shepard had lunch.
Yes.
But Mr. Capello and Mr. Shepard were not only in the same place, they made eye contact.
I can't speak on behalf of Mr. Shepard, but to Barry Capello, yes, he claimed he made eye contact.
Objection hearsay.
That's sustained.
Motion to strike if any answer was given.
Granted, the jury will be instructed to disregard.
Ms. Gibbons, when Mr. Capello allegedly made eye contact with Mr. Shepard, Mr. Capello was working?
Objection hearsay.
Your Honor, if I may be heard.
Hearsay is overruled.
Ms. Gibbons, I'll ask that question again. When Mr. Capello allegedly made eye contact with Mr. Shepard, Mr. Capello was working, right?
Yes.
And he was working at Klein Travel?
Yes.
And that's a travel agency named after his new identity, Tom Klein.
Yes.
Then hours after making eye contact with Mr. Shepard, Mr. Capello was found dead at his home.
Yes, it's very unfortunate.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, defense, any other witnesses?
May I have a brief redirect?
Very brief.
Yes, Your Honor. One question, Ms. Gibbons. Why did you not go to DeLand, Florida to investigate yourself?
Well, I wasn't the investigating officer in this case, and all of the evidence had prompted the same opinion that I had prior to being retained as after. There was no need to go.
Thank you, Ms. Givens. May this witness be excused?
Yes, the witness may be excused. Defense, do you have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor. The defense rests.
Okay. Miss my bailiff, just a quick point of clarification.
Yes, Judge.
Do we go straight into closing or can I give them a break?
You are able to take a break. Would you like a quick update of time left for each team?
Yes, please.
So the prosecution has 9 minutes and 24 seconds left, and then the defense has 9 minutes and 56 seconds left.
Okay, we're only going to take a very brief break. Attorneys, go ahead and get your final thoughts together for your closing, but let's reconvene in 10 minutes. Bailiff, did I go over? Are we ready?
Yes, whenever you're ready, Judge.
I'm ready. Attorneys, you ready for closing?
Defense is ready.
Prosecution is ready, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Clark, you may proceed.
Your Honor, permission to share my screen with a PowerPoint. This has been cleared with defense.
Go ahead.
At this point, I would ask the court to put the Zoom into speaker view so you are able to see myself as well as the PowerPoint itself.
I'm there.
Thank you. May I proceed?
Yes.
You heard today that Mr. Capello was brutally strangled outside of his home. He walked out his front door to check on his car, and within seconds, jumper cables were wrapped around his neck, tighter and tighter and tighter until there was no more air to be had, and Mr. Capello passed away. What was Mr. Capello thinking as those jumper cables were being tightened around his neck as he flailed and gasped for air? We will never know. And we will never know because of Augie Shepard, the defendant in today's trial. 4 years ago, Mr. Capello testified against Enrico Trebisani. In the court of law, Mr. Capello put Mr. Shepard at the head of the DeBruno crime family. This was a crime punishable by murder to the DeBruno crime family. After this, Mr. Capello was relocated. He's put into witness protection and taken to DeLand, Florida, to start a new life as Tom Klein. He worked at Klein Travel Agency, right on Woodward Boulevard, for 3 years, until a fateful day when Mr. Shepard walked past his door. Within 12 hours of Mr. Shepard walking past Klein Travel Agency, Mr. Capello was dead, brutally strangled feet from his front door, feet from safety, feet from his wife. He was left there, discarded, waiting for someone to find him, which his wife eventually did. Today, we as the prosecution have brought charges against Mr. Augie Shepard, the charges of murder and retaliation against a witness. For murder, we must prove that the defendant caused the death of Mr. Capello and that he did so with malice aforethought. Now, malice aforethought is not a complex idea. All it means is to kill another person either deliberately and intentionally. We've shown this through the eyewitness testimony who places Mr. Shepard directly behind Mr. Capello with those jumper cables wrapped around Mr. Capello's neck. We've brought the second charge of retaliation against a witness. For this charge, we must prove that the defendant caused the death of Mr. Capello and that he did so in retaliation against Mr. Capello for testifying. We've shown this through Mr. Shepard's own daughter's statements and how Mr. Shepard changed after Mr. Capello testified. Now, we must prove these things beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, this does not mean that you can have no doubt. All it means is that you are left with a moral certainty to act without hesitation. Now, I'd like to go over the facts and evidence and witness testimony that proves that we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Shepard is guilty of these crimes. First, that Mr. Shepard was in DeLand with no alibi. As defense said on their opening statement, Lauren Shepard was with Mr. Shepard the entire time, except for the 3.5 hours during which Mr. Capello was murdered. Next, the physical evidence connecting Mr. Shepard to the murder itself. The eyewitness testimony placing Mr. Shepard directly at the scene of the crime, and the change from Uncle Barry to Rat. Now, to begin, Mr. Shepard was in DeLand, Florida. This is not in controversy. Him and his daughter ate at Positano's and walked to Witt's. This was that walk they went on. They walked directly past Klein Travel Agency. At 12:47, they received the receipt at Positano's and left. At 12:52, they received their receipt at Witt's Frozen Custard just down the street. And right in between, at 12:50, Mr. Capello left a voicemail with Deputy Marshal Lizzie Bowles. He called the marshal's office, as we heard today. But that's not all the testimony we heard today. We also heard the eyewitness description and the physical evidence placing him at the scene. First, we have the Ferrari that was driven by Mr. and Miss Capello, or excuse me, Mr. and Miss Shepard, as they went on this college tour. A 2021 Ferrari that was conveniently missing a pair of jumper cables. The same brand of jumper cables that were used to strangle Mr. Capello outside of his home. But not only this, they're the footprints, those 4 footprints, size 11, made by someone 170 to 190 pounds. Mr. Shepard's weight at the time of arrest, 182 pounds. The shoe size that made those imprints, size 11. Mr. Shepard, size 11. And now we turn to the eyewitness testimony you heard today from Mr. Dembski, who sat at his window and watched the brutal murder of Mr. Capello. Mr. Dembski described the attacker as 180 pounds, 5'11", white hair, black hair, white male, driving an expensive sports car. Augie Shepard, 182 pounds, 5'10", white male, black hair, driving a 2021 Ferrari. And lastly, the change from uncle to rat. They went from spending holidays with the Capellos. But after Mr. Capello testified, Mr. Shepard said, "Uncle Barry is a rat. He is dead to our family. I never want to hear that rat's name again." This was all after Mr. Capello placed him at the head of the DeBruno crime family. Now, we have proven to you through all of this evidence that Mr. Shepard is guilty of not only murder, but retaliation against a witness. And that is why when you go back to the jury room, you'll receive this verdict form. And under count 1, mark guilty, because we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Shepard came up behind Mr. Capello, wrapped those jumper cables around his neck, and pulled as tight as he could while Mr. Capello flailed and gasped for air until he died. And under count 2, mark guilty, because Mr. Shepard did this for Mr. Capello's testimony against him. Augie Shepard said, "Uncle Barry is dead to this family. He is a rat." And when the opportunity presented itself, Mr. Shepard took it. He murdered Mr. Capello in cold blood and left him dying directly outside of his home. Do not let him escape the consequences for his crime. Find him guilty. Thank you.
Defense.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead.
Members of the jury, what happened to Barry Capello is a tragedy, but we can only get justice for Mr. Capello if we get the right person. And right now, we don't know who killed Barry Capello. Now, the prosecution wants you to believe that Augie Shepard wanted to kill Barry Capello, but we have no evidence that he was actively searching for him, that anybody in the DeBruno crime family was searching for Barry Capello, and we have no evidence that a hit was ever ordered on Barry Capello. When Augie Shepard walked right past Klein Travel Agency, he didn't attack Capello, he didn't confront Capello, he didn't even stop and do a double take. Members of the jury, we're not even sure whether they saw each other. In this case, we have no fingerprints, no DNA, and one eyewitness who couldn't even see the face of the attacker, who can't even be sure of his race. The following facts, what we actually know is that an average built man driving a dark colored sports car committed the murder. But do you know how many average built men drive dark colored sports cars in the Florida area? Numerous people could fit this description. But the FBI, they believed Augie Shepard to be this mob boss. So they took every piece of objective evidence and tried to force it on Augie Shepard. Members of the jury, they pointed the finger at him because it was easy, because it was convenient. But we can't convict a man because it's convenient. That's not justice, that's injustice. We still have some questions that are still unanswered. Why was Barry Capello's trunk open? How could Augie Shepard possibly have found that home? And who killed Capello? Now, I'm not saying I know the answers to all these questions, but the fact that we still don't have answers is concerning. The burden of proof, now that's on the prosecution. They want you to think he's guilty because he was in the same zip code, but this is the United States of America. We don't convict people because you happen to be in the same zip code. You have to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. That means you must have a moral certainty that leaves one without hesitation to act. And that's a burden they simply did not meet. They don't have enough evidence. They don't have enough explanations. And we don't know who killed Barry Capello. The only reason Augie Shepard was in Florida was to spend time with his daughter, just to tour colleges all around the Stetson University area in DeLand, Florida. During that whole time, they were from 10:30 to 11:30, they were together. Augie Shepard had no time to search for Capello or try to track him down. The following facts are indisputable. After walking by Klein Travel Agency, they went to get ice cream, they went to Stetson University, back to the Airbnb, to dinner, and back to the Airbnb by 10:30. This is supported by the testimony you heard from Lauren Shepard. This is further verified by the letter to Stetson University, and this is confirmed by the cell phone GPS records. The cell phone GPS records show that they went to all the locations that Lauren told you, that she was being truthful today. And the cell phone records show that Augie Shepard, he never went back to Klein Travel Agency. He never drove around looking for Barry Capello. And he never was anywhere near the Capello's home. Members of the jury, we heard no evidence of a second cell phone or a burner phone. Agent Wright tried to say there was, but why didn't we have any evidence of this? They clearly did not meet their burden. Now, I want you to think about the prosecution's theory. It just doesn't make sense. How could Augie Shepard have found Barry Capello? They want you to believe that at 11:30, when Lauren Shepard went to go to that party, Augie Shepard got in his car, drove, found Mr. Capello, and killed him in an hour and a half. But members of the jury, we know that this is impossible. You heard from Raylan Gibbons, an expert in finding missing people, an expert in witness protection with 30 plus years of experience. They told you there was no public information linking Barry or Adrian to the house. And even if someone knew that Barry Capello was Tom Klein, there was no information about the Kleins linking them to that house. If an expert in tracking missing persons can't find them, how is Augie Shepard supposed to find them in an hour and a half? Did he just go driving around DeLand, Florida, and just happen to stumble upon a home? And even if he did, how would he know that home belonged to the Capellos? Just doesn't make any sense. And think about Lauren Shepard. She didn't tell her father how long she was going to be gone. If she was only gone 30 minutes, his alibi would have blown up right in his face. Even if Augie Shepard found that home, their theory still doesn't make sense, because why was the Capello's trunk open? They want you to think that he was lured outside, but how is opening a trunk going to lure him outside? It's not going to make enough noise to wake him up. Is he supposed to know that the dog is going to bark? The barking of the dog's going to wake up Capello, and he's going to hear that, and he's going to know that someone's breaking into his car. And even if it was loud enough, wouldn't that awake the neighbors? And what if Capello just called 911? The idea that this is an assassination just does not make sense. What makes sense is maybe it's a burglary. Maybe the burglar was going through the trunk looking for something to steal. Barry Capello came out. The burglar went in the bushes to hide. And when Barry Capello went to close that trunk, he thought he was caught, and he had to strangle him to death, maybe with his own jumper cables. We also learned about the other stones that Agent Wright just didn't check. He didn't check whether Adriana Capello was involved. He never checked whether this is drug related, despite Barry Capello's past drug history. And members of the jury, I want you to take a look at the evidence or lack thereof. We have one eyewitness who can't see the face of the attacker, saw it across the street, through a window, in the dark, while it was cloudy, with very little light. They can't tell you the attacker's race. They couldn't see their face, but yet they want to tell you that they know the attacker was exactly 5'11", 180. You didn't check your common sense at the door. This just doesn't make sense. They described an average person, and the FBI heard what they wanted to hear. And that dark colored sports car, members of the jury, a black sports car at the scene does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a green Ferrari was at the scene. And I want you to think about the evidence found at the scene, the physical evidence, the footprints. All those footprints show was an average built man who weighed between 170 and 190 pounds made those footprints. We couldn't tell you what brand there was. There's nothing linking Augie Shepard to those footprints. Any average sized person could have made those footprints, but they only saw Augie Shepard. And I want you to think about those jumper cables. Those jumper cables are sold nationwide, even in Walmart. Millions of people could own those cables. The fact that the cables are missing from the Ferrari doesn't prove anything, because 18 other people rented that car and 18 other people could have lost those cables. We don't know whether those cables were in the car when Mr. Shepard rented it. There was no fingerprints on those cables. There's no DNA on those cables. There's no forensic evidence found at the car. There's no fingerprints found at the scene. There's no DNA found at the scene. Not a single camera footage saw a green Ferrari. Not a single eyewitness saw a green Ferrari. And not a single person can recall Augie Shepard leaving his Airbnb when he got back. Members of the jury, the prosecution did not meet their burden here today. I ask you to return the only just verdict, the only verdict supported by the facts, the law, and the evidence. That's a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you both for your, is there a rebuttal by the?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No worries. May I proceed?
You may proceed.
When you go back to the jury room, take a look at what defense showed you with the phone records, because that right there is proof of a burner phone. As you heard testimony today, Mr. Shepard was on the phone for over 2 hours. You heard Lauren tell you that today. And when you check those phone records, there will only be 2 calls placed for 3 minutes each. That is evidence of a burner phone. And the defense is right. After seeing Mr. Klein at Klein Travel Agency, the new identity of Mr. Capello, he didn't attack him immediately. Instead, he went back to his Airbnb and plotted so that that evening, that night, he could drive to his house once his daughter snuck out, giving him no alibi. And he could go up and strangle Mr. Capello for what Mr. Capello testified to. Hold him accountable for his crimes. Find him guilty of murder and retaliation against a witness. Thank you.
Attorneys, thank you for your excellent presentations today. I think we're going to take a brief recess to submit our ballots. Is that correct, my bailiff? Awad? You're muted.
Yes, sorry, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, judges, if you could turn your cameras off and your audios off and fill out your ballots. Once you're done with your ballots and you submit them, if you can turn your camera on. And then once all the judges are done, you can go into comments, and then I will verify that we received all the ballots. Thank you.
All right. I think this is the attorneys, if you want to enable your cameras, I think we're ready for comments. All the judges are ready. Who wants to start with comments? I missed what AJ said about how to handle those.
Judge, I'm here, Judge, and my little reminder is that everyone's been doing this for a really, really long time, and I was hoping that one evaluator would pick one person, and then you do the overall. I will say that one of our judges, he has a newborn, and he asked if he could be excused, and I said, once I have your ballot, you can go. So he will not be giving you comments, so it's just the 4 of you.
Okay. I'll take the final comments then, so my
ma'am.
other judges can help me with other parts.
Well, I'll jump in. I don't know if we have to do this in order, but I'll jump in on, well, I think all of you did a great job. So let's get that out of the way. And you definitely exhibited a lot of stamina over the weekend. So thank you for that. And thank you for your enthusiasm and being well prepared. Clark, I really liked you when you had Lauren Shepard. I thought that was, I mean, you all had difficult situations, and this certainly wasn't the shining gem in the crown, but I thought that you fell back on and you pivoted back and forth from the campus tour to the dinner, then to the phone, and then campus tour. And I think that toggling helped you get a rhythm with your witness. And then I thought that gave you control and it helped you manage her better. So I have to appreciate that from you, because I enjoyed seeing that skill set. So good on you for that. And congratulations to everyone.
I'll jump in next if that's all right. I guess we'll stick with the prosecution team here and just keep going through. Ms. Cook, I thought you started really well. I liked your opening. It intrigued us, got our interest as you went into that quote. I would say your confidence was wonderful in your opening. Your eye contact was great. Your pacing was great. Just remember to keep that up, even when things aren't going your way during your direct or rulings aren't necessarily going your way. A lot of what we do as lawyers is bluff and keep that poker face going. You clearly have what it takes. So just remember, take a deep breath and have that confidence in yourself. And again, I would echo Shannon, wonderful job, wonderful witnesses, dedication on the part of your witnesses. They really knew what they were doing too.
Okay, I'll hop in here. First off, I can obviously see why y'all are here. You guys are all very solid. And so a lot of what I'm about to say is kind of nitpicky. And so I'll focus on you, Miss Sadie, as we're, I guess, trying to kind of stick to one. So I saw everyone do this, but I ended up writing it down as like a specific example on yours. I saw a lot of people, obviously the witness wasn't giving you the answer you wanted. You wanted a yes or no, and you're like, I know I can get this yes or no. But what I saw happen is like 3 times, you've asked it now 3 times where you're like, well, that wasn't my question, or so that was a yes, right? And sometimes I'm all about that, where I'm like, that's solid, that's a good thing to do. But there were a few instances where I'm sitting there going, the answer they've given you, while not explicitly what you want, all of us sitting there listening already know the answer. We know that the answer is what you want, and the witness is just being difficult. But you belabor the point, and I get to the point where I'm a little annoyed at the attorney that's asking it 8 times, because I think it was on the car being black, where, like you said, so the car was black, and he's like, yeah, well, I thought it was gray, and there was some back and forth on whether or not this car was black. And I think I wrote down, you've asked him like 8 times, which, to be fair, he didn't answer your question explicitly, but you got to a point where you didn't need the answer. But like I said, it's kind of nitpicky. The rest of it was all pretty solid. That's the one thing I wanted to say, because I think I saw everyone do that at least once. Other than that, y'all all did great. Like I said, I can clearly see why you guys are the finalists here.
Okay, so let me just say that yes, I I was very, very impressed with everyone. I am a sitting judge. I preside over felony cases in San Antonio, Texas. And so before I was a judge, I was in the criminal defense practice for 17 years. So 22 years all combined now. A quick story. Evaluator Stevens was my clinical professor in law school. And so a lot of what I'm going to say actually came from her. I learned from her. But I think it's very important because these competitions that you get into could also be a place where you pick up some bad habits, and you don't want to pick up bad habits, right? And so you have to remember, as an attorney, no matter, clearly you all want to be in litigation. Clearly you all want to be in court. And so you're really in the minority. You're signing up for like what not very many lawyers do. However, when you are in court and even in some of these competitions, you have to remember this is your record. And so when you have to take very good care of that record. So for example, just a couple of very small examples. There was a photograph, I think Ms. Sadi, you introduced it, and you had A, B, and C on the photograph. Your appellate court will have no idea what you were talking about. So if you're going to use an exhibit like that and you're going to cross a witness or direct a witness based on that exhibit, you have to say for the record, what are you looking at? Because I saw the exhibit, I knew exactly what you were talking about. Your appellate court will not know. And so in keeping with that, this is your record, it's the most important thing. It's also, for both sides, a very important day for everyone, for the victim's family, for the defendant's family. It's a very important day. So don't talk over each other. I know we're on Zoom, and so sometimes there was a delay in witness Shepard stopping so that I could rule on the objection, and I even admonished you. That was just, and I understand there could be a technical delay, but in court, you never want to talk over each other. Again, because the record, it is the most important thing that you're preserving for your client, state for your appeal. So don't talk over each other, let the judge rule. So no smacking lips, no rolling your eyes, no laughing at a question or a response, because this is the most important day in either your victim's family or the defendant's family. State, on the phone call, I didn't admit, you were spot on the objections, spot on the hearsay exceptions, but I wasn't going to let you have it that easy, right? And it's not far-fetched, because sometimes judges will make rulings that you don't understand. And you're like, well, that was hearsay, I had an exception. So if you're going to rely on exception to hearsay, you have to lay that in your questioning from the witness. So if you know it's a presence as impression, or it is an excited utterance, or whatever the exception is, when you're asking the witness those questions, you need to make sure your record supports that. Hang on a minute. My son has a chair test going on. I have to submit. So anyways, you have to make sure that, because when you argued your exceptions, I mean, you said all the right things, but the record didn't support that. So you're asking me to now believe you. So your record has to support what exception that you're going to rely on. And you did very well. I liked that, even though I said sustained as to hearsay, there is very professional pushback, little bit, that you can give a judge and be like, look, I know you ruled, but this is a present sense impression. And so there you have to learn how to navigate that, because there is appropriate professional pushback you can give a judge. And if it all fails, offer of proof. You have to, this is connected to the objections. I do want to talk about the objections. Some of them were off. So when you're in court, have a cheat sheet, have a list of what objections you want to make. And I know this is a thing that even seasoned attorneys struggle with. Everybody wants to go straight for the 404 and 403 objection. Was wife slapping husband relevant to anything? Like, start with relevance. I always tell them, okay, you guys want to jump to more prejudicial than probative, but you haven't even told me what it's probative for. So have a list of objections and just go down the line. Sometimes you just have to start with relevance, and you can succeed on that. Let's see. Okay, cross-examination. And I have to echo, this is where I'm going to echo what the other judge also said. You know, sometimes in these cases, cross-examination is all the evidence you're going to have. Defense, a lot of the, you know, you're not compelled to prove anything. You don't have that burden. So cross-examination sometimes is all the evidence that you're going to put forth for a jury, and you're going to argue that cross-examination at closing, right? And so don't be afraid when you have a difficult witness. And all of you did do this, when you have a difficult witness who's not answering your question, if you raise your voice or you keep repeating, that is not my question, or is that a yes to my question, or if you become more argumentative, that's not going to fix the problem. You have to be ready. And this is a skill that you're going to learn over time. But as a trial attorney, you have to get ready to walk back from that script, find a place where you can get that witness to answer your question. And I know you're pressed for time in these competitions, but even a little bit of quick thinking can solve that problem. So, and I could go on and on about that, but cross-examination is very, very important. And I think that's all I have. Just be careful with the sidebars. You know, sometimes, you know, like when the investigator for the defense was testifying, prosecutor, I wrote it down. You kept saying, well, you know, in your investigation, you missed this, or you can't explain this. That would draw a sidebar objection. You can't, you know, add your own editorial to what you think about her investigation. Just ask her. You're going to argue that to the jury. So you just want to leave, you know, put the breadcrumbs, leave that path, because you're going to argue that at the end. You know, that's really all I have. Those are like the major points that covers everybody. Yes, ma'am. Sevier.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say we didn't give Snizek any love here. Can I say something on behalf of the judge that we lost? I just wanted to say that when you were crossing Wright, who I want to be FBI agent Wright when I grow up, but when you were crossing her and she sent you that zinger that his cell phone had been on the campus tour, you didn't lose your cool, you kept rolling, and it seemed like you pivoted in your closing. I think it was a surprise to everyone that we didn't hear the voicemail. And it looked like you pivoted in your closing and you made the point of we're not even sure they saw each other without even bringing up the phone call. But you're like, where is all this coming from? So I just wanted to give you some individual feedback. Thank you so much, Judge.
Yes, absolutely. AJ, where are we? We're pretty much done with comments. I think there's
yes,
still
you
time.
are. And I need about 20 more seconds and I should be ready to go.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions from the attorneys or the witnesses? This is, I mean, you know, this is one thing I did love about all of you is that people, you had like the worst case ever. Like, why did you even prosecute, right? But man, you had some passion. You had some passion with your arguments and your opening and your closing and your cross. Like you owned it, even though it was weak. You owned it, and you just, you know, all I got on this end was passion. Like, yes, I'm ready to convict. Defense, don't get so comfortable with the fact that you have you know, such a strong case. Like, I mean, it's nobody. Like, this is not the guy. You got the wrong guy. And you just never, you know, pivoted from that. That was your game, and you were going to take it to the end. So both sides did really good with that. I'm done. I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before we start making any announcements, can I just take a real quick print screen of this fine bunch? I'm going to take your picture. So if you could just open your eyes and give me a smile, and let's just take one good one for the camera there. Let me see if that worked out. Because if your eyes are closed, I'm going to make you do it again. Everyone's smiling. That's great. That's fantastic. All right. So with that said, Your Honor, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. It's that moment that we've all been waiting for. So you all can leave your cameras on because we love seeing your reactions. Of course, I want to begin by saying a huge thank you to our final round judges, thank you. I'm gonna do one of these and hope that you'll join me in doing one of these. Just clap, just. Our final judges had a very difficult time with the ballot. I can tell you that. Once again, we had a 3-2 ballot. So, and it's very, very close on points. So, I want to thank our final judges for being here on a Sunday afternoon. All right, it's that time. Let's see if this works. All right, so, I know you want me to get right to this. So in the final round here, we had the University of Colorado School of Law, Team 171, and we had Thomas Jefferson University School of Law, Team 184, face off against each other. And the winner is, oh wait, I forgot, right, the best advocate in the final. I know, I did it on purpose, I know. But you knew I did it on purpose, right? So we do have a best advocate in the final round. In order to determine the best advocate in the final round, each one of our judges voted for everybody 1 through 4. If there was a tie, I would have been required to bring the judges into a private room and announce and have them duke it out and try to figure out who would be the best advocate in the final round. That didn't happen here. Our best advocate for the 2022 All-Star National Challenge is Alex Clark, Team 171, University of Colorado Law School. Congratulations, Alex. Fine job by you and all of the advocates here today. And that means that we're here again. The All-Star National Champion for 2022, and I just saw 2021 is up there. Need to fix that. Too late. Is the University of Colorado School of Law. Congratulations to the University of Colorado School of Law. We're proud of all of you. Thank you for being here this year. Thank you to all of our co-hosts. Thank you to our judges. Thank you to all of our great co-hosts and collaborators. And more importantly, to my board of advocates who have been here every second of all of this. Thank you to each and one of you. And that concludes these announcements.
I do have a brief question. Could you share the prior screen one more time?
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to see your name again? Is that it, Mr. Clark? Want to see your name one more time?
Could you just share the prior screen? I was trying to get a screenshot, but you went by really quickly.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Wait, no, that's the wrong one. Hang on.
And while I'm unmuted, I think everyone over here wanted to thank both Tom